NFL draft weekend is officially over, and I think I can speak for everybody whenever I say the Arizona Cardinals emerged as major winners. We're going to talk about that and a little bit more on this episode of the All Cardinals podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. For Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Druin. Go to follow us on Twitter at RichieBrads36, at Donnie Druin. Go to follow our work at allcardinals.com or site.com/NFL/Cardinals. Richie, NFL draft weekend has come and gone, and you were side by side with me the entire way covering it. I feel like it dragged on, but went by fast at the same time. I don't know how to explain it.
It was a process for sure. And like the Cardinals were obviously a very active team. They made a handful of trades, both for the future, but also for the present. They were trading up the board, they were trading down the board, they were making future assets, they were doing all sorts of stuff to secure a good draft this year and secure remarkable draft compensation for next year. We are legitimately, for those of you that wonder, is draft content over? No, it's never over. It's always draft season. There is a 2024 way too early mock out right now on All Cardinals. Make sure you check it out. But that mock is based off of inverse Super Bowl odds, meaning the teams with the worst odds to win the Super Bowl is the draft order. So in this scenario, Donnie, the Houston Texans have the worst odds, meaning they have the first pick, and the Cardinals were able to somehow swing the Texans' first round pick next year. And funny enough, the Cardinals have the second worst odds, meaning according to NFL Super Bowl odds, the Cardinals currently own the number 1 and number 2 picks. That's only been done one other time in 1993 by the Colts. They swung and missed on both picks. Big L for them. But focusing on 2023, this is a great draft, Donnie. Top to bottom, I thought they got good talent. I thought that they were able to really assess some needs. They took some gambles, but I also think that they just did a really good job letting the board fall to them, which is not something that we're used to seeing after nearly 10 years of Steve Keim drafts.
Dude, 100%. And I think it's good whenever you walk away from a draft. And the Arizona Cardinals, for the better part of the last decade, have exactly not impressed a lot of people with Steve Keim at the helm. But what Monty Alstonfort did during his first 3-day stretch as the general manager in the war room for the Arizona Cardinals is night and day better. And I think I speak for everybody whenever I say, there were some questions about what the Cardinals were doing and how they were going about their rebuild heading into the draft. But after the NFL draft, or looking back on it, with hindsight, what a remarkable job they did. We're going to get into their picks and what 2024 looks like here in a little bit. But a main storyline from draft weekend was not only the people and the players that came to Arizona, but potentially a guy who was almost on his way out of Arizona. DeAndre Hopkins was, I feel, expected to be moved at some point during the draft over the weekend. He's currently still on the team. He did not get moved despite multiple reports on both day 1 and day 2 suggesting he was going to be gone. DeAndre Hopkins still with the team. And then today, I don't know if you caught his Instagram story today, today being Monday, March 1st, but according to himself, he's back in Phoenix. He's been back in Arizona for a couple of days now. He said, everybody's asking me to stay. And he says, who says I want to leave? He's like, who's saying I want to leave? And not trying to read a little bit too much into it. But here's the thing. The Cardinals were the one that put him on the trade block.
Oh, 100%.
And so it's like, yeah, he probably doesn't want to be part of a rebuild and probably wants to maybe try to get another last squeeze at a potential contract and a Super Bowl run or whatever else he's looking for. But it's been a lot of like Cardinals trying to get rid of DeAndre as opposed to DeAndre trying to force his way out, right? I'll start with this. Did you expect DeAndre Hopkins to be traded at some point during the draft?
100%. And I mean that 100%, not 99.9%, nothing like that. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop after the Cardinals had said he was on the trade block, after DeAndre Hopkins had said that he asked for a trade, which again, like we kind of said, maybe that kind of came because the Cardinals placed him out there. We don't really know. But the bottom line is I was absolutely just waiting for it to happen. And the longer the draft went on, I kind of sat there and I was like, this isn't going to happen, is it? And by the start of day 3, I became unsure if it was going to happen. It didn't end up happening. And now 2 days after the draft has ended, Hopkins on Instagram saying, like we said, who says I want to leave? Obviously, that comes across like a very strong possibility now that he will be back. He will be catching passes for Kyler Murray, and they will be able to continue to have a good connection. And if nothing else, for what's probably going to be a rough season, at least you still have the Murray to Hopkins connection to watch, which, as we've seen from the last 3 years, is one of the better connections in the NFL, no matter who's calling the plays and no matter what the win-loss column looks like.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what are your expectations moving forward of DeAndre in Arizona, because you felt like if he would have been moved, kind of a big window of opportunity was the NFL draft. Now we're going to start getting into like OTA minicamp territory, that part of the season. For what it's worth, DeAndre was not at the voluntary workouts the Cardinals had last week, but then again, voluntary. Isaiah Simmons wasn't there either. Another interesting topic to bring up, his fifth-year option is due on May 2nd. So, time will tell if the Cardinals will pick that up. Yeah, very much looming. Waiting until the very last day to get that done too. But shifting focus back to Hopkins, I mean, Arizona's receiving core obviously is better with him. Arizona's offense obviously is better with him. But, does it make sense for him to stay? Considering his cap hit, I think it's $30.75 million against the cap this year, the second highest of receivers behind Tyreek Hill. The Cardinals are not expected to be a good football team next year. For different reasons, DeAndre wouldn't want to be on the roster. The Cardinals would not want DeAndre on the roster, for lack of a better term, with his cap hit and the things the Cardinals want to get done, tank. I don't know how else to say this. Like, should he be on the team? Should he be? We can talk about of whether or not he will be in a moment. Should he be on the roster for 2023?
Donnie, I feel like that's such a loaded question because there's just so many factors that go into this. DeAndre Hopkins is comfortable in Arizona. This is a great place to live. This has been an organization that, for the most part, has been very patient with him and has shown him nothing but grace during the injuries, during the suspension. I mean, we really didn't hear any rumblings about a trade until this offseason with, surprise, surprise, a new general manager, a new head coach. Like, it's not a surprise that that's when the talks came up. But before that, the Cardinals were very committed to him. He's obviously got a very good connection with Kyler Murray. Those guys, when they are playing with each other, make sweet, sweet music. He has had nothing but success. I mean, his first year out here had 1,400 yards. His second year, in less than a full season, he caught 8 touchdowns. He was averaging almost a touchdown a game. This year, again, less than a full season, he was on pace for like another 1,200-yard season. Like, when he's on the field for the Cardinals, this is as dominant a receiver as you're going to see. And all of that makes it feel like an easy connection for him to stay. However, there is the factor that, he is in his 30s now. He's going to want to have to decide if he's more focused on one more big payday or if he wants to compete for a ring. And either of those possibilities, unfortunately, don't exist in Arizona within the near future. I mean, by the time Arizona's ready to compete, he's going to be nearing his mid-30s at this point. And who knows what the rest of the roster is going to look like. They could have his replacement in the building and Marvin Harrison Jr. next year. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here for what the Cardinals are going to be doing. And Hopkins may or may not be in their plans for the future. This isn't a Larry Fitzgerald legacy guy. This isn't a guy who has spent his whole career with Arizona and is going to spend his whole career in Arizona. He's going into year 4. Don't get me wrong. He is a tenured guy. But again, there's just so many factors here to consider for whether or not he is a good fit to stay and whether or not he's a better fit to leave. Like I led off with, it's a very loaded question. There's so many little moving parts here. So I don't know if I have a definitive answer for you. I apologize for not, but that's my reasoning, playing out both sides of the argument for you. I'll let you decide what you think, and I obviously will let the listeners decide what they think as well. But there's my layout of everything for you.
Yeah, so I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this, just because the kind of player Hopkins is on whenever he's on the field, whenever he's healthy, but also at the same time, With the Cardinals clearly going into a rebuild, like financially, it just does not make sense to have him on the roster. Even for Hopkins too. I mean, like you said, he's in his 30s now. It doesn't really make sense for him to be on a football team that is not going to compete when he himself probably wants to get a Super Bowl before he walks out. I mean, dude, he saw former Texans teammate and future Hall of Fame player JJ Watt exit the NFL without a Super Bowl ring. You can make a lot of cases for a lot of players. JJ Watt was probably in the upper echelon, the upper tier of, hey, this guy probably deserved to win a Super Bowl at some point before he retired. DeAndre Hopkins has made a lot of money. He's accomplished a lot of things. That Super Bowl ring is still very elusive, and I feel like he probably wants to go to a team that gives him a better shot than that. Not only that, let me take you through the numbers financially of what a trade is going to look like pre and post June 1st. Before June 1st, the trade would see the Cardinals accrue almost $21.1 million in dead cap space, which is automatically going to be applied to the salary cap this year. And they would save about $8.9 million. A trade after June 1st, which can be after June 1st. And I do want to point out, let's say a team is confident in their receiving core heading into the season, but they're just not getting it done. The trade deadline would be a very interesting time period to watch DeAndre Hopkins' name, because dead money, the Cardinals in the post-June 1st trade, according to Over the Cap, only take on $10.5 million while saving $19.45 million. If we're talking purely financial, it makes so much more sense for him to be traded post June 1st. And I also do want to point out, I wish I had saved this clip because I was in the room whenever he said it. Monty Ossenfort was asked twice after the first round whether or not he thought DeAndre Hopkins was going to be traded. He said, nope, I don't foresee it. And then someone asked him again, and then he doubled down and said, nope, DeAndre is a Cardinal. We're moving forward.
Yeah. I kind of leave it up to you guys. What do you guys think? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know for sure. DeAndre Hopkins is yet to be moved. Whether he is moved in the meantime, we'll see. It's literally a waiting game at this point to see whether or not he'll be on the roster. But definitely cheeky Instagram stories of him, saying, "Oh, who says I want to go?"
Yeah,
right. Who says I want to go? So, moving on to the draft class, the Arizona Cardinals had a total of 9 picks through 7 rounds. Moved back from pick number 3 to pick 12, and moved back up to pick number 6 to go get Paris Johnson. And Paris highlights a pretty solid draft haul, I would say. I do want to dive really deep into these guys, but we'll do that kind of as time progresses. And there's going to be a lot of time for us to fill the void of the offseason, right? After that dead period between like training camp and like mini camp where there's nothing to talk about. So we'll definitely dive a little deeper into this, but just give me your overall thoughts on the draft class, how you thought the Cardinals did. I mean, I feel like they added some really, really talented guys here.
I do too. And Donnie, I look at the first 2 days of this draft. Man, they nailed it. The Paris Johnson Jr. trade. I loved it because the Cardinals were able to trade down what that ended up being 9 spots. They picked up a future first that is more than likely going to be a top 5 pick. And then they knew they needed to get back up to secure their guy. But guess what? They have the assets. So they have no problem going up, getting their guy. And then at the top of the second round, BJ Ojulari is right there. And I really like him. I don't know if this is a full-time guy, but I'll tell you what, for a guy like Jonathan Gannon that had so much success with a pass rush by committee last year, this is exactly the kind of guy that you throw into a rotation with Cameron Thomas and with Myjai Sanders. Like, I don't know if any of those guys are full-time starters, but if you're telling me that you can rotate those 3 guys and then eventually add more talent there, you're not going to complain. Again, look at what Jonathan Gannon did last year. They had 4 guys with 11 or more sacks. They had 5 guys with 7.5 or more sacks. And I mean, you had so many different edge rushers. You had Hassan Reddick. You had Brandon Graham. You had Josh Sweat. I mean, that's more than just your starters that were able to get there. He had a defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave. Like, he was able to generate so much pressure. So having bodies is more important than having like these superstar guys. Don't get me wrong. Of course, he would love to have Myles Garrett. Of course, he would love to have Nick Bosa. But he's going to be just as happy having capable guys there. Garrett Williams is a super interesting pick for me. He's coming off an ACL tear, but if he's healthy, there are some serious ball hawking skills here. Love it. Michael Wilson, another guy who's battled injuries, high upside receiver if he's healthy. The day 3 picks, I really am intrigued by the depth value here of all of those guys. Clayton Tune, or is it Tooney? I'm not sure.
Tune.
It is Tune. Okay. He's the most interesting to me because he's got a little bit of mobility and he's got the ability to make plays. He's not the most talented guy in the world. He is a little bit limited athletically and with the arm, but nonetheless, the Cardinals are looking for a new young quarterback 2 here because Colt McCoy is going to be turning 87 this year, and they they do need to have a plan for Kyler Murray recovering. And Tune is a guy who could be exciting enough to at least run this offense at a higher level than a very limited and very old Colt McCoy, who's again he's an AARP member at this point. So they gotta start planning for a future at quarterback 2. As silly as that sounds, Tune could be that guy. But the bottom line, I think this is a great class. It's at a worst, this is a B plus. I think this is probably a solid A.
Yeah, and I think there were themes to what Jonathan Gannon wanted to do on each day. I think the theme for the first day, or the goal, for lack of a better term, was to get their guy. And I know a lot of people really loved the pick, and as they should, of Paris Johnson, most because you did get a first rounder from what's probably going to be a pretty bad Houston Texans football team next year. That on top of them getting protection for Kyler Murray moving forward. I mean, a lot of people loved it. Some said they shouldn't have taken Paris Johnson there at number 6. But I mean, I think it was Ian Rappaport that said that the Falcons were fully planning. Yep. The Falcons were going to take Paris Johnson at pick number 8. So very smart of the Cardinals to go move him back. I mean, he can play tackle. He can play guard. I mean, Paris Johnson, and you knew this draft class better than I did. Paris Johnson was arguably the top offensive line prospect, right?
Yes, he absolutely was. And real quick, I want to jump on something that you said, because you were talking about how some people didn't want to draft Paris Johnson, and you noted that there were rumblings that the Falcons were interested in him, so the Cardinals moved up. You know what we didn't see during the Steve Keim era was him wanting to be aggressive and move up for his guys. How many times did we hear the Cardinals really wanted Patrick Mahomes, but they didn't move up? They wanted
Steve
Deshaun
Keim
Watson.
Going on those podcasts, and he's like, man, he's like, do you know how many times we were just one pick away? And I think that's the difference between Monty and Steve. Monty's going to wheel and deal because Monty knows. Monty knows. Pony up. As long as you get your guy, you can have those 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. Go ahead.
They don't matter. Pony up and get your guys. Like this, it's so inexcusable for a general manager to come out and say we were so close. We were this close to making the trade. Well, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. This is how the old saying goes. So for you to come out here and tell me that absolute nonsense is so beyond frustrating. So it's a breath of fresh air, Cardinal fans, to have a general manager that heard the rumors, and even if they were just rumors, even if they were just smoke, took it with 100% certainty that it was going to happen and made sure that he got Paris Johnson Jr. I tell you what, Donnie, if he becomes an all-pro or if he becomes a bust, at least we can say with absolute certainty that Monty Ossenfort had the cojones to move up and get his guy. That is not something Steve Keim did.
Regardless of where you get him, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you take him, whether you take him at 3, whether you take him at 6, whether you get him at 12. I mean, if he turns out, nobody's going to remember, oh, man, Paris Johnson was the 6th pick, or Paris Johnson was 3 or 12 or whatever it was. Going to say Paris Johnson is an all-pro offensive guard, offensive tackle, whatever the Cardinals want to use him as. And obviously, there's a very long road to go before he will reach that level. And I don't want to place those expectations on him or anybody else in the draft class for that matter, because that's simply unfair. But the case being, as long as you get your guy and they pan out like you hope you will, more times than not, it'll be great. Paris Johnson, great pick in my opinion. BJ Ojulari, intriguing for me because he spent Probably equal amount of snaps at both the left and the right side, just in terms of rushing the passer. And I think that's going to be something Gannon and Nick Rallis will definitely utilize in terms of the pass rush moving forward. They lost Zach Allen. They lost J.J. Watt. They lost Marcus Golden. There's going to be opportunities. There's going to be opportunities for Ojulari. There's going to be opportunities for Cam Thomas and Myjai Sanders, like you already pointed out. I think BJ needs to add a little bit more muscle, and I think that'll come with NFL strength training.
Yes,
and
he is lean.
Just him. Yeah, and
you can see in the picture we have, he's lean.
Yep. But if he can just add a little bit more to that frame, definitely. What's the word they always use to describe him in the process? Not like quick, but just like he was. I think he had the second most sacks or pressures behind Will Anderson the last 2 years of his college career, if I remember correctly.
Well, it's not sneaky athletic. I know that much.
Nope, not at all. So Ojulari pick, very good player. I'm intrigued to see how they use him. If Garrett Williams rebounds from his injury, we were talking about like an early day 2 guy. I mean, it's just the things he can do on the football field. It's just
could have snuck into round 1.
Yeah.
If Emmanuel Forbes can go in the first round, a healthy Garrett Williams can.
Yeah. I mean, if you would have told me round 1 or round 2, I wouldn't have been surprised either way. So
you would have to guarantee it was completely healthy, like no ACL or anything last year. And if he played the way he did this previous year, then I would say, not with certainty, but that he could be a first round pick, no worse than top 50.
So I mentioned the themes, right, or the goal Austin Fort had. So round 1, obviously best player. Rounds 2 and 3, day 2, he described as high character football guys, and those are guys that are they're not going to be anything they shouldn't be on or off the field. They're going to be great in the locker room, and I think they just wanted very good players who are going to come in and help kind of lay the foundation for what they want the locker room to be moving forward. Ojulari fits that mold very well. Garrett Williams fits that mold very well. Michael Wilson, you see the C on his chest. You see the captain the last 2 years for the Stanford football team. Not crazy athletic. He's not going to go up and make one-handed catches. He's not the fastest dude in the world. I think he's like 6'2". I forget how much he weighs, but it's like a pretty big-sized receiver who can move around a little bit. It's just an overall solid dude that you want to have with your football team. You talk about the C on Wilson's chest. Number 18, Ojulari, the coveted number 18, passed him down. I was
going to say, if people don't know the history behind number 18 at LSU, that is like certified leader status. They don't hand out that number with lightness. I mean, like some of the greats that have worn that number, like Tre'Davious White is one of the first guys that comes to mind. They had a tight end a handful of years ago who has gone on to be like a great radio personality. I can't think of his name, but 18 is a very important number. You wear that at LSU. That is more special than 7 for them. Like 7 is a cool number. 18 is a meaningful number.
Yeah, 18 is like, look, man, like you are a legitimate guy on and off the field. You deserve to wear this.
Yeah, they don't hand that out lightly.
No, 100%. So day 2 is, the high character guys. And then day 3, the last day of the draft, rounds 4 through 7, a lot of athletic upside to these guys. John Gaines tested almost better than 99% of the offensive linemen. Extremely versatile. I think he played guard, tackle. He played right tackle. I think he played right guard. He played center. And he even logged a snap at left tackle at UCLA too. Also, for what it's worth.
Just one.
It's not important, but it's also not a non-story that the offensive linemen they grabbed, Paris Johnson Jr. and Jonathan Gaines, both blocked for mobile quarterbacks. Paris Johnson for C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields, and then John Gaines for Dorian Thompson-Robinson at UCLA. Throwing that out there, so definitely they know what it's like, right?
They got a dual threat in Clayton Tune now.
Yeah. Clayton Tune is pretty solid athletically. He has ideal size for the quarterback position.
That's sneaky athletic.
So we get on the conference call, and for those who don't know, after a player is drafted, probably 5 minutes afterwards, he gets on like a conference call with media members and like reporters and stuff. So we get connected to him, and the first question, I forgot what the first question was, but right off the bat, he's like, I'm the best quarterback in this class. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I like this kid. We need
You
this
want
dude.
those guys.
Dude, you want him. And I know Josh Rosen said the exact same thing. And
But you
is Clayton
want
Tune
a
the best
confident
quarterback in this
guy.
class? Is Clayton Tune the best quarterback? Hell no, he's not the best quarterback. But you like the confidence, you want that hunger in the quarterback room, right? Especially to push guys like Colt McCoy and David Blau in the beginning part of the season whenever Kyler Murray isn't going to be there.
100%.
Go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to add.
But Owen Papo is going to play weak side linebacker in the Cardinals defense. He's really thin in the frame, but he likes his sideline to sideline speed. And I do want to point out, a lot of people think in what is going to be the assumed 4-3 defense for the Cardinals. Gannon and Rallis are not budging on what they're going to do defensively. But everybody seems to think they're going to copy that 4-3 from Philadelphia, right? They've been working Zaven Collins. And just really quick on that, like, it's not like whatever 3-4 or 4-3 base defense, they're in nickel most of the time anyway.
Right. That is so important for people to realize, man. I don't think people understand that enough.
So, I mean,
pigeonhole defenses and
nickel and these guys need to be versatile anyway, right?
Yep.
So if you label them as like a 4-3 weak side linebacker, they're going to be in the middle. They're going to be on the right side of the ball sometimes. They're going to be out in coverage, right?
Dude, this isn't the 70s.
Yep.
This is 2023, and we've been doing this for 10 plus years.
Yep. So Papo's that, like, not rangy. I don't want to call him rangy, but a very good athletic weak side linebacker in the Cardinals defense. Zaven Collins was working with outside linebackers in minicamp. It's not minicamp, the voluntary workouts. Just something to monitor. So there, you could see a linebacking core of like Kaiser White in the middle. Zaven Collins is like the Sam, and then Isaiah Simmons is the Will. And where I was going with this is, let's say the 5th-year option for Simmons isn't picked up. I think Papo can fill Simmons' role as that weak side linebacker. Moving into the next pick, Keitrell Clark from Louisville. A lot of people, dude. First of all, his draft party was like the loudest out of anybody's I've ever heard. And dude, like if my friend, brother, son, whatever is getting drafted, it would look like the Great Gatsby. So like, I do not blame him at all. Keitrell is that like corner that he can play a little of everything. He's not super big, so he's probably more suited to fill that like slot and nickelback role, which is where Isaiah Simmons played a lot of last year too. Just something to monitor in case his 5th-year option is not picked up. Now, granted, it could be picked up, and these could just be general depth pieces, but I was talking with our good friend in the podcast, Jess Root, during the draft on day 3, and he pointed that out. And then I'm like, ooh, I did not connect those dots together.
Dude, and I'll tell you what, I'm not saying this is Clark, but if there's one thing that the Cardinals have done very well over the last decade, it's taking those undersized kind of defensive backs and getting the most out of them. Tyrann Mathieu, Budda Baker. And again, those are very talented guys, like first-round talents, and they ended up getting them outside the first round. I'm not saying that's Clark, but if there is a team that's going to be able to generate that kind of production and that kind of elevated play, I feel like the Cardinals are as good a team as anybody else. Like it wasn't just like a specific coach. Like, you got to remember the Cardinals had 3 different head coaches during the times of Tyrann Mathieu and Budda Baker. They just know how to get the talent out of those guys. I don't know what it is with that Arizona water, but they certainly have something that is able to get that kind of play out of them. So, and for what it's worth, if Budda is traded, which again, that's a whole other, what's the word? Can of worms that we don't have time to get into. But I mean, for what it's worth, like, Clark could find his way into that role.
Sure. Yeah. And like, even I've pondered the thought of if Baker were to get traded this year, if they would move Simmons back at safety too. I think that'd be an interesting conversation. We have, and I think a really fun idea would be for me and you to watch film of whenever he played safety the last, I know he played safety the second to last game in Atlanta. I'm not sure about San Francisco, but I think me and you should watch that film and see what we liked and what we didn't like from him playing there.
Order
To wrap
Dr.
the
Peppy,
draft
I'm here
talk up,
for it.
though. Yep, to wrap the draft talk up, Dante Stills the final pick of the draft, and I think for people, if you're looking for something to be like, man, like they didn't do this right, defensive line was probably a big priority after losing Zach Allen. And they didn't really address it heavily. They signed LJ Collier, and I think they got like one or two more people in free agency. But no, like, yeah, this is our guy moving forward. No signings like that. Dante Stills, and you described this best in your draft report for him. Described as a tweener, right? Like he's like not like a 3. He's not like a 7 technique either. Like where do you put him?
Not a nose. He's one of those guys where there isn't necessarily a definitive role for him. But Donnie, we talked about this earlier. People get caught up in, do you play a 4-3 or a 3-4? Well, most of the time we play nickel. So when we look at Dante Stills, it's like, well, he may not be a certified 3 tech. He may not be a certified nose tackle. He may not be a guy you put out wide. But what he is, if he reaches his potential, obviously, is a guy that you can flex around the defensive front, get creative, get a little cute with him, and just find his niche, find what he does well. Maybe it's stuffing gap lanes. Maybe it is being a pass rusher. You got to play around with him and figure out, his strengths, his weaknesses, place him in a position for him to succeed. And, the rest is history. We are in a common age in the NFL where pigeonholing guys to positions is so irresponsible to do. You shouldn't look at a guy and say, he is definitively this. This is the only thing we're going to do for him. Now, don't get me wrong. This doesn't mean do the Hassan Reddick route and make him play a million different things. But what it means is, like, don't be afraid to figure out and play around with these guys and figure out what they do well. If there was one thing that came out positive for Hassan Reddick, it was that they figured out that this is not a dude that you can play everywhere, but this is a dude who can get after the passer. Like, it's just unfortunate that you learned that lesson so late and you ended up letting him walk, but at least they were willing to experiment. And I think that's something that you do with Dante Stills if he is able to get on the field, because he is a late round pick. He's not guaranteed anything. But I think that this is a guy that you should experiment with. You should see what he's good at and what he's not good at, where he's comfortable and everything.
Yeah, dude. And
who
especially with names.
Gannon?
And like with names like Rashad Lawrence, Lecky Fotu, Jonathan Ledbetter, like those aren't, and I mean no disrespect, but like
not at all, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, and like there's going to be room for Dante Stills to impress enough in training camp and preseason for him to start logging snaps, I think, in the early parts of the season, and then they'll look
That's
like
his whole class. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot of upside. There's some guys coming off injury that do scare me, but I mean, I think you say it best, and I love the saying that you have. You don't draft guys for what they were or what they are. You draft guys for what they can be.
100%. Couldn't say it better myself.
So a really strong 2023 draft class. Moving forward, though, and you had touched on this in the beginning parts of the show, 2024. And the picks that the Arizona Cardinals have looks very promising. They have 2 first-round picks right now. They have a second-round pick. They have 3 third-round picks, 2 projected fourth-round picks with the comp pick for Zach Allen, 2 fifth-round picks, and a 7th-round pick. I mean, dude, this is amazing. It's simply amazing. What the Cardinals have done for their haul, and this could be expanded if they were to trade Budda Baker, if they were to trade DeAndre Hopkins, that list is going to grow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the 3 third-round picks, one of them could be flipped to move up to the second to go get somebody too. I don't want to harp too much on this, but man, like what a job Austin Fort did, willing and dealing, getting some really good chess pieces for 2023, and the positioning the Arizona Cardinals have for 2024.
Yes, and I wanna expand on one of the points you made, was talking about those third round picks and not being afraid to move up into the second. So when you look here, you've got 11 picks. This does not mean the Cardinals need to make all 11 picks. They could turn 11 picks into 6. And if you get quality players, no complaints. I am firmly of the belief that quality is more important than quality. I know some people want as many swings at the bat as possible. I am one of those people that's like, I would rather take the guy I feel most confident with than take three guys who could be good. Like if I was about this during the draft process, I was not shy about it. I was firmly of the belief that the Cardinals should have taken Will Anderson Jr. with the third overall pick, and they shouldn't have thought about it. Like that was just where I was at. Obviously, with hindsight, knowing what they got, yeah, that you make that, especially knowing it's a new regime and everything. But I more often than not am of that opinion of just take the proven guy. Don't overthink it. You know who's good. You know who's a gamble. Take those proven guys, especially for a Cardinals team that's rebuilding and trying to add definitive talent here. So I would tell you, Donnie, that when I look at this class, yes, you can make all 11 picks and you could knock all of them out of the park. But if you were to package some of those picks, all I'm saying, that's a lot of ammo to have 3 first-round picks. And this, we're almost a year away. There's a lot of time for this to change. I had so many guys in my way too early mock that I was frustrated that I kept out of the first round. There is a lot of talent next year. Again,
you also slid in Jaden Daniels, which shocked me. Literally shocked me. I was reading through it.
Do you know how frustrated I was to not find fits for Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler in the first round? And it's a Cardinals team that doesn't need a quarterback. I had 6 quarterbacks in the first round. I felt like I could have had 8. And that helps the Cardinals so much, Donnie. Having in a crazy scenario where 8 quarterbacks go in the first round, that is 25% of the picks for guys to fall down the board. It's a good corner class. It is a good running back class if they want to get a guy of the future. There's a lot of receivers here. There's Brock Bowers. Like there is a lot of talent here for the Cardinals to capitalize on. And if they are in a scenario where they do think about Caleb Williams, there's so much potential here to build around him. Like I love the way the Cardinals have set them up for a deeper draft class. And again, I want to echo this, everyone. There's a lot of time between now and next April for this class to get worse or get better. We'll see. But as how dare you get rid of me, sir? I'll remember that.
We're keeping that. We're keeping that in the podcast.
Good.
We're keeping it.
You know what? I said 17 swear words in that time, so it's probably for the best.
Probably for the best indeed.
Man, I'll take the
we got to go
out and just apologize.
Interesting. We have to wrap this up. Any closing thoughts? I mean, we can keep regurgitating this over and over again. But for the first time in a very long time, I feel like Cardinals fans have something to look forward to for the future. Yes. 2023 is not going to be a year where they go 12-5, right? I mean, it's not going to be a year where they sneak into the postseason. But moving forward, your front office are putting the best pieces of the puzzle together as quickly as possible for a rebuild that a lot of people would have thought would have taken years down the road to advance. With how they're setting themselves up, 2 or 3 years might be the time frame.
Yep. 100%. This is a team that absolutely knocked this draft out of the park. They do it again next year. They're going to be back a lot sooner than we think. But we got to wait for these picks to develop. We got to wait to see what's going to happen. Until then, you got to be happy with what you've seen so far.
Undoubtedly. And then we will have so much more coming, in-depth player profiles for all of the draft picks. Obviously, the Isaiah Simmons 5th-year option. We'll be more than happy to talk about that later in the week. But until then, for Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Drew. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the All Cardinals podcast. Follow us on all the social medias. Follow all of our work everywhere you can click and read about Arizona Cardinals content. Until next time, we'll see you later.